Hello, my name is Bruce White and I am a registered respiratory therapist with Mid-Cities Medical. Today we're going to go over the proper use and operation of the Philips Respironics Ultrafill system. This is an excellent platform that will allow you to use oxygen in the home as well as fill your own tanks to take when you go out to the grocery store and such. So let's start off first with proper hand sanitation. It's always important to make sure that the hands are clean, especially during this time. So I'm going to sanitize up here real well and then put on some gloves and we'll get started. We'll start off with the concentrator. That's this blue machine over here. This device is designed to take room air, which is 21% oxygen, and concentrate it to anywhere from about 91 to 94% oxygen. And it's a great machine because it can just work for thousands of hours and provide you with that supplemental oxygen that your physician has prescribed you for. So we're going to glove up here. And this machine, like I said, does take room air and concentrates it into a higher concentration of oxygen to help you with your current breathing disorder. This machine is designed to be plugged directly into the wall. You don't want to use a power strip for it because power strips can actually cut the voltage and cause premature wear and failure of the concentrator. So always make sure to plug it directly into the wall. When the technicians come out to your home to set you up, you're going to see them take one of these devices. It checks for proper ground, and we do have proper ground, so it's safe to operate the equipment in this location. So first thing we're going to do is plug in the concentrator. Okay. This machine has a one power switch right here on the front. Couple things about the concentrator. It has a leader flow valve right here that's going to be adjusted to the prescription that the physician has prescribed for you. For the sake of this training, we're going to put that on 2 liters. Okay? So ideally, you want to have this machine running for 2 to 5 minutes before you engage it with this machine, which is the fill station. We'll talk more about this in a moment. Okay? This machine here is up and running. We have a power light on and you can hear it starting to cycle. What we're going to do at this point is show you how to properly hook this up and get this ready to provide you with oxygen. So the first thing we're going to do here is talk about the humidifier bottle. Many people that are on supplemental oxygen are oftentimes prescribed higher liter flows depending upon the degree of their illness. Generally speaking, anything over 3 liters per minute can have a tendency to dry out your nasal passages and even dry out your throat. So we recommend using this. It's called a humidifier bottle. What you want to do is unthread this, and on the side of the bottle, you can't really see from this distance, there's a minimum line down here at the bottom and a maximum line up here at the top. You want to use distilled water only in this. You don't want to use tap water because there's too many minerals in it. Distilled water only, and I recommend filling it up to just about a ½ inch below the top line. The reason being is when you have water in this, and this is properly threaded back on, you don't want to cross thread it like I just did, you get a boiling action inside there, which brings the oxygen in contact with the moisture, and it will give you some humidification in the breathing tube, which we'll talk about here in a second. So this is very important. You want to make sure and take this water out, dump it out every day, rinse this bottle thoroughly, and then fill it back up with distilled water. Depending upon your prescription, if you're on oxygen 24/7, you may have to change this a couple of times a day. But it's very important to keep a good eye on that and use these bottles for 1 week. And after a week, you throw away the whole thing, and you'll have additional supplies that our driver technicians will provide for you for that. So again, like I mentioned a minute ago, these jars are very easy to cross thread. So you want to make sure that when you start it, that you have it on the right threading. The reason that's important, if this is cross-threaded, it won't seal properly, you'll have an air leak, and you won't get the proper amount of oxygen delivered to you. So it's very important to do that. It fits right back here into the machine. Okay, at this point, we're going to look at our concentrator, and we're going to see this little device right here. This is actually where the air comes out. This is where we hook our tubing up to it. So at this point, we're going to imagine that we have this 1/2 inch below this top line with distilled water. And we're going to continue with our setup here in the concentrator. The Veterans Administration put out National Patient Safety Guidelines, and they are for what's called fire-safe cannula valves. These are devices that are designed to allow the free flow of oxygen unless there's a fire. It's basically a fusible link inside this. If there's a fire, it heats up and stops the flow of oxygen. Because oxygen is an accelerant for fire, oxygen is not flammable, but if it's present, it can make a fire burn much hotter. If you've ever done any camping or had a kind of a fire outside before, you see those coals starting to die down and the flames go out. If you get down there and blow on those red coals, they start glowing brighter and then a flame will return. That's because oxygen is an accelerant, okay? It is not flammable, but it will greatly enhance combustion. So you want to make sure that you're always operating this equipment at least 15 feet away from any open flame or any type of a heat source. That includes e-cigarettes, of course, an open flame. You don't want to ever smoke with oxygen, ever, ever, ever. It's very, very dangerous and you can be burned severely. Electric stoves, electric ceramic heaters, anything like that that can produce heat, you want, or spark. You don't want to have anywhere within 15 feet of where you are using this equipment. Now, if you are still a smoker, you want to make sure to exercise extra caution. Never, ever smoke while using your oxygen. It's a recipe for disaster. We don't want anyone to get hurt. So please, please don't ever smoke while using your oxygen. If you have to smoke, make sure, especially in the morning, when you take off your cannula or your mask, whatever it is you're using, you want to make sure that you wait about 15 minutes before you get near any open flame, you do any smoking, any kind like that. The reason being is when you're sleeping, your clothing, your hair, your bedding, everything becomes saturated with that oxygen. And it's an environment that it's not safe to. Certainly wouldn't want to light up a cigarette when you're in bed because of that. But get up, walk around the house a little bit, have yourself a cup of coffee, and then if you do smoke, go outside away from your equipment. After you've done with smoking, then you can go ahead and return and put your oxygen back on. So what we're looking at here is what's called a fire-safe cannula valve. Like I mentioned before, this device is designed to stop the flow of oxygen in the event of a fire. So in other words, your concentrator, your tanks, whatever you're using, you want to have these on them, and the proper way is to install 2 of them. We'll talk about that in a moment. And that is to protect you, the wearer of the oxygen, and also to prevent the device, whether it be a tank or a concentrator, from putting that oxygen, that high quality oxygen, into the room and possibly adding to the danger and adding to the fire. So the fire safe valves have a barbed connection on them, and what you want to do is just kind of wiggle the tubing right onto it just like that. You don't want to have any more than the first barb showing, okay? Once that's done, you want to go ahead and hook this up in the same manner on the front of the machine. You can have the last barb just showing there. You want to put on there well enough so it's not going to come off in case someone trips over the tubing or something like that. So you want to have a good solid connection. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to hook this up to our water bottle, our humidifier bottle we talked about a moment ago. And that's what that's doing. It's allowing the oxygen to go through this tube, through the fire safe valve, and into your humidifier bottle. Okay, once we've had that done, we're going to take some additional tubing. It could be anywhere from 25 to 50 feet of oxygen tubing. This tubing you want to change out every 2 weeks, so your driver will always make sure you have enough supplies to be able to do that. The fire safe valves, however, these are good for up to 6 months, so you don't want to throw these away. You want to keep these whenever you change out your tubing. Okay, once you've got your oxygen going into your humidifier bottle, you want to take one end of the tubing, and this has a tapered connection right here on the humidifier bottle. You just want to kind of wiggle that on there just like that. Okay, and then we have up to 50 feet to allow you to move about your home and still be receiving your supplemental oxygen. On this end of the tube, This is what we call the business end, because this is the end that you're going to be using. You want to go ahead and put another fire-safe cannula valve on. And again, just wiggle that tubing on so the first barb is exposed, so it's in there nice and snug. And at this point, you can actually feel the oxygen coming out of this fire-safe valve. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and utilize our cannula. This is the device that we are going to use to provide the oxygen so we can breathe it. Okay. We have another little short tube here to put on this side of the fire-safe cannula valve. And then this is the actual cannula here. You want to hook that up just like this. And again, you want to push it on there far enough that it's going to stay, but not so far that you can't take it off when you want to change out your tubing. Okay. I'm going to move a little closer to the camera to show you an important detail here. These cannulas have little nose pieces, and if you can see how they're curved, you know, kind of like this. This is the part that you want to face towards you when you're putting on the cannula, okay? And the proper way to put the cannula on is make sure these nasal prongs are pointed towards you, and just insert them in your nostrils. Take one side over the top of your ear, the other side over the top of this ear. There's a little slide right here that you can use to kind of gently snug it up underneath your chin. And at that point, just breathe normally. Now, a lot of us adults have picked up bad habits since we were infants. When you're newborn, you're what's called an obligate nose breather. In other words, you can't breathe through your mouth. It's just, you don't have that ability as an infant. We get lazy as we get older, and we have a tendency to breathe through our mouths a lot more than we breathe through our noses. So it's important to remember when you're using the cannula to breathe through your nose. Because if you breathe through your mouth, you're not going to get the full benefit of the oxygen. And you just want to breathe normally. It's a very gentle feeling. It might feel a little strange at first, but it will diminish after you get used to using it. If you ever find yourself not being able to tell if this is actually has oxygen come out of it, a simple test, you can take a glass of water and dip this into the water. If you see bubbles coming out of it, then that's how you know you have oxygen flowing out of the device. Okay? We have additional information available on our website. And you can also call us if you have questions or concerns about how the operation of this equipment is to be done. Okay, this machine concentrator does have a vent on the back of it. This is the actual air intake. It's important that you keep this 4 to 6 inches away from a wall. Also, you don't want to generally put this in a closet and try and run it in there, because you want it to have good airflow all around the unit so it can actually pull in that air and concentrate it. It does work pretty hard, so it's important to help it out by making sure it's not too close to a wall or in a closet or something like that. And once a week, just take a damp cloth and just wipe this off. You don't want it to be dripping wet because you don't want the machine to suck any liquid into it, but just a very, very damp, clean cloth to wipe off this area here. That'll keep the intake clear on the concentrator so it can run efficiently and be there for you when you need it. Okay. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and talk about the fill station. Okay. This machine works in conjunction with your concentrator. Okay. When you're home, we recommend that you use the concentrator exclusively, and that you save the tanks for when you're out of the home going to doctor's appointments or to the market and things like that. You can put up to 50 feet of tubing on this, and most homes, if you place the concentrator in the central place, you can navigate to the kitchen, the bathroom, and the bedroom fairly easy. If the noise is a problem, you can always put it in a different room because you have enough tubing to help with that. Okay. This device here also needs to be plugged in the wall directly. You don't want to ever plug it into a power strip. We already checked our outlet to make sure it's properly grounded, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and plug this in. And as I mentioned before earlier in the video, you want to make sure that this machine is running for a good 3 to 5 minutes before you try to fill any tanks. That gets this machine up and running, producing oxygen, the concentrated oxygen at its best rate, and it will avoid any issues such as alarms and things of that nature. So we're going to go ahead and plug this one in as well. okay? The reason why it's alarming is the power switch was on, and you'll get that whenever the power fails or is restored, okay? So it's already turned on for us. You have on the front of this unit your power switch right here, okay? And then you have some additional lights over here. You have a black button here, which is for filling. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And you also have indicator lights to give you an idea of how well the tank is filling, okay? And this is an eject button over here, okay? But before we go any further with that, we need to hook up the interface from the concentrator to the fill station. This crossover tube here does have some flexibility. They don't have to be side by side. You can separate them a little bit, but generally speaking, it's best to have them side by side, because if they're too far apart, you try and walk between them, it might become a trip hazard for you. So generally put them close. This connector fits into this receptacle on the side of the concentrator right here, and it's just a matter of pressing it in until it clicks, and that'll lock it into place. If for some reason you just disconnect this connection, there's a little metal tab right here, and if you press on that, it'll automatically eject the connection. So you want to make sure when you plug this in that it's a good positive connection that clicks, and you know it's in place there. Also on this side, there's the same connector. Make sure it's solidly connected, because this is a very important pathway to your fill station, okay? So at this point, we've talked about the operation of the concentrator. Now we're going to talk about how these two machines work together to provide you with a portable source of oxygen. This machine will accept a couple different types of tanks. This tank here is a very common and very popular tank. It's called a B tank, and this will provide you with oxygen, say when you're going to the store or something like that. So let's start with how this one gets filled first. If you look at this connection here, there's a little connection here on the bottle. First thing you want to do before you try to fill any bottle is always make sure that the valve on top of the tank is closed. If the tank valve is not closed, it's not going to fill the tank, okay? So the same thing goes for this. You ever heard of the old saying, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey? Well, it's the same thing with this. So if you turn this valve to the right or clockwise, that's going to close it. If you turn it the opposite direction, that's going to open it. So always make sure that the tank valve is shut, because you may have an empty tank, and if you don't check that valve, you won't know if it's closed or not. So first step, always check that valve. Okay, second step, there's a connector here on top of this fill station that's designed to receive this type of bottle. So what you want to do is there's also a little kickstand right here that you want to kick up when you're using the B tanks to fill, okay? So once you have closed your valve, you know it's closed for sure. You've got your machine connected. You've got a green light over here. At this point, you're ready to hook the bottle up to the fill station. So you want to place that on the connector, let the other side of the tank rest in the kickstand, and just stand straight over it and press down. And it easily engages and locks into place, okay? To take this tank off, you always want to hold it, make sure you have control of it, press this blue button here, and that will eject it, okay? So again, you want to place this on the machine, press down until it engages. You'll notice that the first fill station light comes on, okay? Now, at this point, if you walk away and don't do anything else, you're going to come back and this tank is going to be just as empty as it was when you left it. There's one more step that's very important, and that's this black button right here, okay? If you press this button, once your tank is engaged properly on the machine, you'll notice this light begins to flash, okay? That's indicating that this tank is actually being filled up with good, high-quality, breathable oxygen. Another point to support that, these machines are designed to run as it fills a tank, but it's also designed that you can use it at the same time. But there's one important thing to remember. This machine cannot be above 2 liters when it's filling tanks. The reason being, it's important to make sure we get a good, high quality volume of oxygen in these tanks. 91 to 94%, and sometimes a little higher is generally what we're looking at. If you try to fill the tank faster by kicking up the liter flow, it may fill the tank faster, but the quality of the oxygen is going to diminish down below 98%, which is unacceptable for supplemental oxygen. So you can't fill these tanks any faster, okay? These little tanks here can take approximately an hour and a half or so to be from empty to fill. And these larger tanks, E-tanks we'll talk about here in a minute, take approximately 6 hours. But it's very important the machine can't be above 2 liters whenever you're filling tanks, okay? So as you can see here, we still have our first light flashing. As this fill process progresses, the second light's going to start flashing, then the third, and then the fourth light. When all those lights are solid blue, that's when your tank is full, okay? At that point, when you have a full tank, again, you're going to maintain control of the bottle. You're going to press this button to release the tank, and then you have a full tank ready for you when you go to the grocery store. Now, durations of these tanks will vary. I think we're going to go ahead and put up a duration chart on the website as well, which will give a quick reference for you, because depending upon what your liter flow is, and if it's constant flow or pulse dose method, it's going to change how long the tank will last. But whenever you take this out, you want to always make sure that it's either in the tank bag and laying down, being stored safely, or it's in the tank rack itself over here. The reason being, these tanks have 3,000 pounds of pressure in them, okay? The tanks are tested for safety every 5 years, and they have an amazing track record for safety over decades. They're high quality equipment, and they are tested for safety, and they work very, very well. But because of the potential of all the energy inside this tank to be released suddenly, this could become a missile, okay? And I say that just to let you know, it's important to recognize that you have to properly store these tanks. If this tank was to fall over, potentially, then this valve be hit in just the right way, it could crack the valve or break the valve and cause this tank to fly about in a very unsafe manner. So you want to avoid that at all costs. The way to do that, always put your tanks in the carts or in the racks. If you don't have a cart or a rack to put it in, the safest thing you can do is lay it down. That way it can't fall over and be a hazard. So that's just a little tip for tank safety there, okay? Now we have the larger tanks, which are handier for an extended trip to the doctor or to the grocery store. This is called an E-tank, okay? And this is the tank that takes approximately 6 hours to fill up. And the process to fill this is very similar to the B tank. First thing you want to do is put the kickstand down, because the kickstand is only designed for the B tanks, okay? There's a little rubber cap on these tanks to protect the connection. Just make sure you wiggle that cap off, because you don't want that in the way, because you won't be able to hook up the tank. Okay, again, make sure you have positive control of the tank. These tanks weigh around 8 to 10 pounds, so it would be a little painful if you dropped it on your toe, so try to avoid that. Again, this connector you want to point down into the receptacle, and then maintain positive control of the tank, and just use the heel of your hand to press that to engage it. You'll see our first blue light automatically came on again. Now, again, most important factor, if you stop there and walk away, you're not filling any tanks. The last step to this process is to press that black button right there. So whenever you see these lights flashing, you know that the tank is actually filling, okay? When our drivers come to your home, they're going to probably give you at least 2 of these, possibly more depending upon the region you live in. And they are going to give you a tank that is already full. And it'll have this red collar on it that says for emergency use only, okay? This is your backup tank, and this is essential to have available to you in the event there's a power failure or something along those lines, or equipment failure. You know, we do an excellent job with testing, medically sanitizing all this equipment before it goes out to any of our patients' homes. We pay very, very close attention to this equipment, and we do our very best to make sure it is the best equipment available when we bring it out to you. But everything that's man-made can fail at some point. So in the event that there is a failure, this backup tank is provided for you to have to immediately, don't spend time trying to figure out what's wrong with the equipment. you know, especially if you're on oxygen 24/7, immediately get on that tank at your prescribed liter flow and then call us. And we can oftentimes troubleshoot and resolve problems over the phone, but if we can't, we do have 24-hour emergency service that's available 365 days a year, holidays, everything, and we'll come out and get you taken care of if need be. But always make sure that you're putting the patient first. If there's an issue with the equipment or you feel like it's not putting out good quality oxygen, immediately switch the patient over to a tank and then give us a call and we'll help you further. But this little red card here says emergency use only for backup. So when you put this tank in your home, leave this collar in place and always know that you don't want to use this tank unless there's an emergency, okay? Because these tanks take approximately 6 hours to fill up. If you use that and you don't have it, it's not going to be good. So please make sure you keep this as your emergency backup tank, okay? So we've talked about the concentrator, we've talked about the fill station. Let's talk now more about, okay, this tank here was already partially full, so you can see that the lights have progressed from 1 to 3 and the 4th light is flashing. That's an indication that this tank is getting close to being full. So we'll keep an eye on that and let that fill while we're continuing to talk. But let's talk about the regulator that comes for your oxygen tanks. This regulator is designed to operate in 2 modes. A constant flow mode, which means what the name says, the oxygen comes out continuously, okay? And many physicians will prescribe constant flow for their patients. Some, especially for ambulation, may prescribe what's called pulse dose. If only I could speak. Pulse dose, okay? What that means is this regulator is designed to sense when there's differential pressure in the tubing. So when you take a breath through the nose, again, through the nose, not the mouth, this device senses that and it gives you a little dose of oxygen. And it will do that every time you breathe in. And that's prescribed by physicians for people that just need a little assistance when they're ambulating or when they're up walking around. Okay. This device also has a high pressure gasket installed in it. I don't know if I can get where you can see that or not, but I'll try. Okay, that little brass and rubber gasket with those grooves in it. It's very important that that's in place. If that is not in place, this will not work. You'll also be given extra of these when you're set up at the time as well. Okay, so make sure that gasket's in place. I'm going to use this little tank here, the little B tank, for our demonstration purposes. I'm also going to come around here one more time and show you some location points on this tank. Okay. These tanks use what's called the pin indexing system, okay? You'll see 3 holes here, okay? These 2 holes here are to receive these 2 pins, okay? And then the large hole is what the gasket covers up and provides the seal for to use the oxygen, okay? So the first thing you want to do is back this off as far as you can so there's no thread sticking through the device here, okay? Then take your tank and look at it, looking for those pin indexing holes right there, and then point this regulator and those pins in this direction. So you're going to go over the top of this, just like that, and let it rest right there, okay? Once it's in place, put just a very, very light amount of pressure on this and slowly move it up until it engages. Again, those pins are going to be going into those pin index holes I was telling you about. Once those slip into place, you want to take this and tighten it up. Okay. Now these have a nice thumb screw on them that will allow you to get adequate pressure. You won't have to get a wrench or anything to try and tighten it up. And we don't recommend that because this handle is plastic and it will break. So you only need enough pressure to get that in place, okay? Once it's in place, there's a couple parts of this regulator that I want to make you aware of. I guess I need to come back over here again. Okay. There's a little window right here. You see where it says CF4? Okay, that means constant flow 4. Okay. all the way up to the top is off. You see off through the window there. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, those are all pulse dose settings. Okay, that's when you take a breath, the conserving device will sense it and it'll give you a shot of oxygen. If you are in to be on continuous flow, there's continuous flow 2 and there's continuous flow 4. Now this is a combination regulator. It's capable of doing both types of air, pulse dose and continual flow. We have another type of regulator that's either blue or green, that's constant flow only. And depending upon what your prescription is, you may have one of those as well. But this device is designed to accommodate both pulse dose and constant flow. Okay? So let's say, for example, you're on 2 liters pulse dose. Okay? We're going to borrow from this existing setup here, since it's already pretty much in place. These fire safe connectors can be a little bit of a challenge to get off too. Okay, this tubing is designed to come off as you kind of wiggle and pull. It will release, but it takes a little bit of practice to wiggle this tubing off. Okay, so what we're going to do is set up our oxygen line on this tank. Okay, these tanks have a nice carrying bag that they come with, and they have a clear window in the front of the bag. What you want to do is insert the tank into the bag. There's a little rubber cup at the bottom to receive the bottom of the tank, and that way you can actually see through the window here at what your pressure is remaining in your tank. Okay, so once we have that in place, we're going to go over here to our outlet on the regulator and take our tubing, again with the fire safe in place, and hook it up just like that. At this point, we're going to go ahead and hook up another tube to this, probably a 7-footer, 4-footer, excuse me. And this is just simply a 4-foot tube, not unlike this 50-foot tube. It's just 4 feet. Okay, once we have that, we want to go ahead and hook up this tubing here. And then I'm going to borrow from this cannula setup over here, since we're not currently using it. And then we're going to take this end here and hook it up like that. Okay, there's a couple different ways you can route this tubing out. There's a little hole right here in the bag, and that's one way to do it. Or you can run it out the zipper side. The thing to remember is you don't want the tubing to be kinked up or anything while it's inside there. So if you put that through the hole here and then bring it out through, bear with me 1 second here. Just put it through like that. And again, like I said, you want to make sure that this tubing is not kinked in any way, that it has a gentle curve in it to allow it to come out of the bag so you can use it. Okay, so we've got our tubing in place on the regulator, and we're going to take our cannula and hook it up on the outlet here. Okay, so once you have your tubing in place, you want to double check and make sure your regulator is set. For the sake of this discussion, we're going to put it on 2 poles. Okay, and Once we have the regulator in place, you want to take your tank wrench on the top and just gently open that about a half to a full turn. No necessary to go any further than that. That's about 180 degrees, half a turn essentially, okay? Once you've done that, you want to observe the gauge here. And in this case, this tank doesn't have anything in it right now, so it's not showing any pressure, but or it's not showing much pressure. But you're going to have a green zone on this indicator that will tell you that's up to 3,000 pounds. Okay. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have air in the tank. Once you've cracked the valve, at that point you can take the cannula in the same manner that we did earlier. Make sure that the curved part is facing you. Place it into your nostrils, one line over each ear, and then snug it up. Now when I breathe, again, this is sensing my breathing and it's giving me a little shot of air. There is some air and it's just not full right now. So when I'm not breathing through my nose, it's not giving me any air. So if I breathe through my mouth, it's not going to trigger it. So it's very important when you're on pulse dose that you breathe in normally through the nose. In through the nose, out through the mouth. That way you're getting that supplemental oxygen that your physician has prescribed for you. Okay? When you're done using your tank, it's a very simple process. It's very much opposite of what we did before. We're going to take the tank valve and we're going to turn it to the right to close it. Okay? Now when we do that, there's still pressure on this tank. Okay? So what you want to do before you take the valve off, say you move it to the bigger tank, is you want to run this valve down to where it goes to continuous flow. Okay, when it's down to continuous flow, whatever is left that's pressurized in the regulator will bleed off. Yeah, and at that point, you can very gently remove the regulator. Okay, now if you take the regulator off without bleeding off the pressure, it's going to make a very, very loud sound that's a little bit unsettling. On top of that, that rapid rush of air can cut and damage the seal right here and shorten its life. So it's important not to take this off when it's pressurized. You always want to bleed the pressure off like I just talked about. Okay? You will have, on occasion, some possible alarms that occur on either one of these devices. There's warning lights over here and on this device here as well. If at any time you see the warning lights, especially on this fill station here, make sure that this machine has been running again for that 3 to 5 minutes like we were talking about before, 2 to 3 minutes roughly. And then make sure, check all your connections, make sure everything is hooked up. And we're also going to have a quick guide to assist you with troubleshooting steps to get the machine back up and running. We'll be providing these for you as well. But if you aren't able to get the machine to function properly without alarms after just a minute or so, again, always put the patient first, put them on a full tank, allow them to breathe, and then give us a call and we will assist you further. David is off camera right now. He's been helping me with this video. He's also one of our equipment experts here at Mid-Cities Medical. Can you think of anything else that needs to be added, David, at this point?
Just be sure that your concentrator is always on 2 when you're filling, because that will cause a yellow alarm. If it's above 2, it will sense it, and it will yellow light, and then it will go to red.
Yeah, he's talking about this machine here. It'll go to yellow, and then it will go to red because it's not getting good enough quality of oxygen.
So always be on the safe side. Make sure your machine's on 2, depending on your liter flow and what machines you have.
Okay. Yeah, this is a basic setup for a 5-liter system. If you've been prescribed a higher liter flow, you'll have a larger concentrator that's designed to put out 10 liters. But those are all things that are going to be dependent upon what your physician has prescribed for you. Okay, let's go back to our tank here. You can see now that all the blue lights are illuminated on this tank, and there is no more flashing lights. That indicates that this tank is full, okay? So once you have a full tank on your hands, what you want to do, again, is maintain good control of the tank. You don't want to pop this off and let it fall off on the floor, because again, it would be painful if it hits the toes. Hold the tank positively, press this to eject it, and then you have a full tank ready for you to use. And again, as a reminder, always make sure that the tanks are either on the fill station, on the cart, or in a rack. You don't ever want to see a tank standing alone by itself, because there's a potential hazard that the tank could fall over and become a missile hazard. That's basically it for the 5-liter Ultrafill setup. Again, thanks for your time and attention. If you have questions or concerns, please give us a call here at Mid-Cities Medical, and we'll do whatever we can to provide you with world-class service. Have a great day.